Hello, we appreciate you joining us for this webinar Wednesday. Today we have Rhiannon Williams, TLC's Cataloging Product Manager, to discuss ways catalogers and librarians can better represent the materials in their collections through the lens of critical cataloging. But before I begin, there's a couple of housekeeping things I want to mention. We are recording, so if you want to share this with your colleagues or watch it again, the recording will be available starting on our website starting tomorrow. We also will have a PDF resource of today's slides. It'll also be available to you on our website, tlcdelivers.com/webinars. Now, since you're joining us live, you do have the opportunity to ask questions, so please feel free to use the Q&A widget at the bottom of your screen throughout the presentation. And Rhiannon, thank you for joining us for this webinar Wednesday. And I'm actually going to start off with a quick poll for y'all. I want to know, oops, I got to launch the poll. Oops, one moment, I'm sorry. There we go. All right. All right, I'm just going to ask the question and you can put it in the Q&A. My apologies. How many of you are currently using critical cataloging to help refresh or judge, I will say judge, your records? Yeah. If you want to put it in the chat or put it in the Q&A, just let us know and I'll see. And as you're doing that, I will turn it over to Rhiannon.
All right, thanks, Ash. So I'm going to talk a little bit about the framework and the context behind what critical cataloging is, where that term came from, and also a bit about cataloging ethics. And then I'll jump into talking about a couple of different workflow projects, and then a short demo of some of this critical cataloging workflows within library.solution. So critical cataloging, as defined by the Cataloging Ethics Steering Committee of the American Library Association, is an understanding and changing how knowledge organizations codify systems of oppression. And this code of ethics was published, this critical cataloging definition was published as part of the Cataloging Code of Ethics, as published by ALA in 2021. And as part of the immense amount of research and time and dedication made by librarians and information professionals to create this code of ethics, there are a lot of different working groups that work together as part of the committee. And each one have great analyses and suggestions from their areas of expertise. And I wanted to highlight a couple of them and some from different areas of cataloging and librarianship and how they kind of all interplay and how they can feed into critical cataloging and cataloging ethics. And one such working group was the subject headings working group. And they mentioned that classification schemas and subject headings and taxonomies, etc., should be formulated with the goal of respecting all people. And this also follows in line with a definition from CritCat, which is an online blog about critical cataloging and a really great resource if you are interested in learning more about critical cataloging and how you might be able to implement that at your system. And the author of the CritCat blog says that critical catalogers understand the catalog in a holistic manner. And they see systems like the Library of Congress classification or Dewey Decimal Classification as living documents that can be revised and improved. And the same thinking of revision and improvement can be applied to all kinds of metadata schemas, vocabularies, and taxonomies, and also shape the way that we approach cataloging or reassessing how we have cataloged materials in the past and moving forward into the future. So I'll talk about broadly the couple of different types of critical cataloging projects and then dive in them a little bit deeper. The first kind of a project I'll talk about is adding authority headings from other thesauri and that may be for headings in the language of the material or adding some more inclusive headings. Another type of project is to reclassify items, either through the creation of whole new classification systems or through the rearranging or moving of items to better reflect the materials using an existing classification system. And finally, I'll talk a little bit about harmful metadata statements and how that can be useful for informing your patrons or your customers or your students about how people can interact and what their expectations should be when they are interacting with materials in your collection. So this first project is about adding headings from multiple different vocabularies. And as I briefly mentioned, there may be two different examples of reasons why you may want to add headings from sources other than just the Library of Congress subject headings. And one of those reasons would be to add headings that match the language of the material that you are describing when you're cataloging. And so when we're cataloging materials that are in non-English languages, because a lot of the US and Library of Congress cataloging standards and recommendations are very English language focused. But there are a lot of very useful vocabularies and thesauri to search for headings that match or are in the same language as the material itself. And adding these headings adds to the discoverability and improves the user experience and the accessibility of your materials and the things that you offer to your patrons, customers, and students. And this added layer of accessibility and discoverability is something that is really important and allowing so that we can connect our the people that we are serving in our communities with the materials that we have to offer. And so I have a couple of different sources here, including the lcsh-es.org, which is a really great tool for finding Spanish and Portuguese language headings. And this particular tool has mapped some of those Library of Congress subject headings to 5 different Spanish and Portuguese language subject heading vocabularies. So you can search for a LCSH in English or even using the identifier, and it will give you suggestions for headings to use in those other vocabularies, which is very, very helpful. And this is a great tool if you are not super familiar with cataloging Spanish language materials, if you're not fluent in Spanish yourself, or if you just want to see what all is out there, what other kinds of vocabularies are available. And then I also have linked here a couple of different vocabularies and linked data services that are available. A lot of different countries and their national libraries or large knowledge institutions publish their own vocabularies and linked data offerings in the language that they are, doing their studies in and their everyday language of the people that they're serving. So a couple of examples of some useful vocabularies include the National Library of Norway, the National Library of New Zealand Maori subject headings, Thai University's libraries, Thai subject headings, and the National Taiwan University Library Link Data Service. And so these are all just a few examples of the hundreds of different offerings for different vocabularies, be it subject headings, genre terms, or other forms of enrichment for your bibliographic records. And there are some really useful tools if you are not familiar with these languages, not fluent, or you would just like to, dip your toes in, see what they have to offer, utilizing some of the either browser extensions or some of those built-in tools like within Google Chrome. You have the Google Translate feature on some web pages, so you can translate that page into English and just kind of see where at what other offerings they have and if that will be useful for your collection and you think it would be helpful for your patrons. So the next type of project for adding headings from a different vocabulary would be to add more inclusive headings to their materials. And this may be for any different group of people that may have been historically underrepresented or misrepresented by more classic vocabularies and schemas, including Library of Congress subject headings. And this includes different groups of people, including LGBTQ plus people and Indigenous people. And librarians have taken on creating more accurate and representative subject headings and ontologies for these groups through the collaboration of that information professional, as well as working with and interacting and having a conversation with the people in these demographic groups who are being described using these different vocabularies and thesauri. So there's been a great deal of care and attention made when creating these different sources. So that is reflected in the terminology used in them that may be more inclusive and more representative and less harmful than some other larger, more antiquated systems. And so no matter which TLC product you are using, if it's Library.Solution, Library.Solution for Schools, or Carl.Solution, any number of thesauri and vocabulary sources can be added to your library and your database, allowing you to more accurately describe your materials while utilizing the exceptional authority control processes built into our library management systems. And there's a couple of different options I have here just as examples of some more inclusive thesauri and ontologies, including Homosaurus, which is a linked data LGBTQ plus vocabulary site. Additionally, there's also the GSSO, the Gender, Sex, and Sexual Orientation Ontology, as well as the First Nations, Métis, Inuit, Indigenous Ontology for the First Nations of Canada. And so these resources, which are all going to be included in the PDF, which is linked on the tlcdelivers.com on our webinars page once the recording of this goes up, all of these are going to be available for you to be able to explore if there's some changes that you can make in using some different language as far as subject headings or genres and things like that for describing your materials to better reflect these groups and any other groups. So now I want to jump over and show a little bit about how you can add a term from a different vocabulary within our software LS2 cataloging, which is the cataloging module as part of Library.Solution and Library.Solution for Schools. So we're going to hop over here to LS2 cataloging, already logged in here. And I'm here in our authorities tab. And so this interface allows you to search for any local authorities that you may have already brought into your system or you've created for your system's use, as well as searching its mark authorities, which is integrated into Library.Solution and Library.Solution for Schools. But we also have the option to go ahead and create a new local authority. So I can create a local authority, which is any authorities that are not integrated into its mark. So this can include any from any sort of thesaurus or external vocabulary source. So I can come in here and create a new topical subject term. And I can add my main entry verified heading here. And this interface here is our natural language editor, just like all of the other cataloging interfaces here in LS2 cataloging. So it's really user-friendly for those who are not super familiar with MARC and MARC standards, and you don't have to use all the bytes and codes and things to catalog, but you still get a really great end result with authority control in the end. And our system does a lot of that MARC processing for you. So I'm going to go ahead and add in my main entry term here, and I'm going to add LGBTQ plus people. And so this is our term from Homosaurus, and I can change my source code here. So I can either have it identified as a local authority, or I can add my other source code, one of the source codes identified for that particular thesaurus as defined by the Library of Congress. And so I can add the Homosaurus source code here. I can also add in our source notes. So I can add any information about the material that I'm describing, or I can also add the URI for this particular term, since this is from a linked data service. And I have that one saved right here. So I copy and paste my URI for this term here. And additionally, I can add my C references here so that when I am searching for an authority within LS2 cataloging to add to one of my title records, I can use any one of these terms, and then the verified authorized form of the heading LGBTQ plus people will show up in the search term. So I'm going to go ahead and add, got a couple of different ones I want to add here. And additionally, like with the lcsh-es.org resource that I shared earlier, Homosaurus also has some crosswalk data mapping between their vocabulary and some Library of Congress subject headings that may be less favored, a little more antiquated, and not something that is widely used. And they have an alternative term to use, including LGBTQ plus people, which is mapped to the term sexual minorities in Library of Congress subject headings. So I can add these as my C references here. So if another cataloger comes in and searches for this Library of Congress subject heading here, and they look on the local tab in the editor, they'll see that this LGBTQ plus people term will show up. It makes it super easy, and I could go ahead and create and verify now. And now that authority has been created, and it's easy for me to add that to any new title records or go back and change and move all of those records to this new heading if I want to. And it really streamlines the authority creation and authority control processes with different vocabularies within LS2 cataloging. So I'm going to hop back over to our presentation to talk about the next sort of category of critical cataloging projects you may embark on. And this includes reclassifying materials. And that's either through a new classification system or through reorganizing materials in an existing classification system. And some of our own customers have taken on a huge task and completed some really incredible work in creating new bespoke classification systems, including the new classification system Mon Dubagang are gathered together at the Saginaw Chippewa Tribal Libraries. Anne Heidemann there is a fantastic cataloger, and she's incredibly inspiring in the amount of work and care that she took into creating this classification system that centers the people in her community and how they value information, organize information, and how they interact with it in their daily lives. And so she worked with community members, getting their input in creating this new classification system and how to organize materials within their library and on the line so that they are accessible and approachable for all of the students and patrons and community members there. So it is very cool. I highly recommend you check out the link Ash put in the chat. Very, very cool. And Anne Heidemann and community members shared about the Mon Dubagang classification system at our annual users conference at TLCU last year. And it was an incredible presentation. I love getting to hear about all of the work that the catalogers at our customer libraries are doing. They're really inspiring, and it's so cool to see the different types of projects they may embark on. And the next type of reorganization and reclassification project I'll talk about is the Native American Foodways reclassification project that Michigan State University Libraries did. And this involved moving a selection of cookbooks by Native American and Indigenous authors from one classification range where they had been previously cataloged as Native American history materials, as opposed to being cataloged and presented with the rest of the cookbooks and cooking manual materials. And since these foods and cooking traditions are still practiced and very much alive and enjoyed today, they felt that these should be classified with all of their other cookbook materials and not move to a different section that may give the impression that these are no longer live and like thriving community resources, and that these are not practices used today when they very much are. And so they embarked on that project, moving some materials around to better reflect the materials themselves, how that they are contemporary materials, and better represent what they have in their collection, and that they're more easily accessible for people if they're looking for a new and exciting cookbook to use. All right. Next, I want to talk about a last example of critical cataloging project includes the creation and use of harmful metadata statements. And these are used to inform our patrons, students, or customers about the information contained within an item or within a collection. And oftentimes these statements or different they come in many different forms, whether it's for like a pop-up or a note on a material or a note on a collection as a whole. And these may have information about how certain groups of people may have been misrepresented, underrepresented, or excluded from materials due to biases at the time. You see these very often in higher education libraries or in government libraries where certain groups of people were not included in larger survey projects or not included in some archival materials due to their position at the time. So there are many different ways that people can utilize harmful and biased language statements on their website, either as I said, as a like pop-up on a certain page, or as a note for a collection, or also as a like a published document in the policy section of their website, or available at the circulation desk. And that can include all of the information about the institution's policies on the inclusion of harmful language and biased language in their descriptions of materials. And Cataloging Lab is another great resource for catalogers, and includes a list of different harmful and biased language statements that different knowledge institutions and libraries have published. So there's a whole long list of different institutions, and give different examples of how they have tackled this harmful metadata statement topic. And something I want to note is that there's a really important and a really helpful tool that a lot of these statements include, and that's a way for the community and the patrons to help in this process through submitting a form or an email when they may come across harmful, offensive, or out-of-date language in resource descriptions. One example I wanted to highlight is something that was included on the Portland City government's harmful and biased language statement, is that this process only applies to language within the catalog descriptions of materials, rather than the content of the materials themselves. As catalogers and librarians, it isn't our job to change the language of the materials or to censor it, but we can be more cognizant and critical when describing and making these materials accessible and discoverable for the communities that we serve. And so there's a lot of care and thought brought into critical cataloging when you are making those assessments and you're making those judgments on a material, when you are cataloging it and describing it. And the choice in vocabulary terms, be them from our national standard, like Library of Congress subject headings, or from more niche curated grassroots vocabulary sources like Homosaurus and whatnot, we can be intentional and careful in how we describe materials so as to reduce harm through the description of materials and while still promoting them as being accessible and available for our patrons. Since that is what we are so excited about as catalogers and librarians, is making all of the things that we have available to our communities, accessible and findable for the people who need them. And so that is all I have today to talk about critical cataloging and all of that. So I'm going to go ahead and pass it back to Ash now.
Thank you so much, Rhiannon. And so we do have a few questions that I want to pull. Oh, looks like one of the questions was answered. So another question, and please feel free to continue using chat or to ask any questions that you'd like using the Q&A. Another question is about ghost headings. Does your system automatically upgrade ghost headings when an authority record is verified?
Yeah, so we have in library.solution, we utilize, and library.solution and library.solution for schools, we utilize the term of a unverified or a verified local heading. And so you can have a heading brought in through our import processes that will be either, you could set it to be verified or unverified. And as you update those, you can update them in the authorities interface that I was showing earlier and verify them. And then you will get updates as those ones come in. Additionally, with the ITSMARC authorities, we are getting nightly updates of records from the National Authority File, and they're updating them every day. And so that's a really great thing. So you don't have to stay on top of changing all of those headings as things come up. And a very similar system within Carl.solution, where we have ghost headings that can be automatically upgraded and updated as you bring in new authority records into your system.
Thank you. There was another question about the resources that you shared, and I just want to mention again, we are going to be posting a version of this presentation on our website. That way you could have access to all of the resources Rhiannon was discussing during the webinar, and keep a copy for yourself. Let's see. Oh, we have a question. What are ghost headings?
So ghost headings are any of those authority controlled fields in a bibliographic or a title record that are not linked to an authority record in your system. Or with library.solution for schools, we utilize your local authorities, either verified or unverified, as well as the ITSMARC authorities. So if you have a bibliographic record that comes in that does not have that the system can't find a match between your authority controlled field, say the 100, or your main contributor field, they can't find a authority record that matches that, it will create a ghost heading or an unverified local, or verified depending on your system settings, that will allow you to continue to have consistency across your search and discovery experience, so that all of those ghost headings will still be grouped together, even if they don't have a authority record associated with them.
All right, and thank you for that. It doesn't look like we have any other questions. And I do have one more question to ask. If there's anybody who's interested in more information about critical cataloging, or about what Rhiannon showed in our library.solution cataloging system, you can just add that to the Q&A or to the chat, and I'll make sure that we get back to you. Any questions you'd like to ask as well, you can send to webinars@tlcdelivers.com. And I want to thank you all again so much for joining us today. This is such an important topic, and it was really great to see so much participation. So thank you, Rhiannon, and I hope everybody has a lovely afternoon.